What's good, what's poppin', everyone? My name is Jaytsu. I'm a fighting game commentator on Tampa Never Sleeps, and these are my 5 favorite commentators. So number 5 is Justin Wong. So this is actually, kind of a surprise for me and a bit more of a recent development after listening to, more of his commentary blocks. Of course, a lot of us think of him as the GOAT, specific moments that come to mind for sure.
Justin Wong! Oh my God!
But especially listening to a lot of his Street Fighter 6 work and especially his block at Evo for third strike with Vicious, I realized one, he's been streaming for so long, right? So he is already one of the most entertaining personalities that we have in the fighting game scene. He's used to being entertaining for a crowd. But not only that, he also has been in the fighting game scene for so long. So obviously he has just such this vast knowledge of the history of fighting games, like how different things apply in certain situations, player psychology, all these types of things. But also he is not afraid to say things that aren't 100% esports on the mic. I remember for, the Hayao moment at Third Strike, the way that he kind of brought it in, he was like, this move, you guys don't understand. This move is useless. It is so bad.
That is a worthless button. That button is so worthless, but he was able to make it useful in a very crazy scenario.
And I think, especially as commentary kind of becomes this bigger and bigger thing, it's very easy to be like, oh, I should always be nice to the players. I should always be as charitable as I can. But listening to that moment where, he was like, oh, this move is so bad. But the way he used that was to build out a story saying, oh, this move, really isn't going to be something you're going to be seeing super often. But we had one specific read that Hayao was looking for in the back of his mind. And that's why it was able to work out. And anything else that their opponent would have done would have, stuffed out that move. But he had this particular read, and that's why this moment was so stellar.
And look at this, the pop-off. This is what he wants. He is a showman. But Jesus Christ, what a freaking play.
Especially listening to that third strike block, and then Justin being like, oh, that move was horrible. You are not gonna see that move that often. I'm like, oh, while I'm happy about my enunciation getting better, my energy getting better, my analysis getting better, a lot of times I'm like, I wish there were more points where I show my personality or my interests or, where, my personality can kind of shine through. And, not necessarily calling everything, oh, this was such a stellar decision. This was so good by that player. And, constantly, showing this positivity even in moments where I'm like, oh, maybe we just made a mistake. Maybe we just dropped the combo. I don't need to be like, oh, this move that we used, I don't need to sugarcoat it and be like, oh, it's so situational. Wow, so smart. It's like, oh, wow, that move is really bad. But it ended up working out, expanding the range in the same way where, oh, okay, my range as a commentator is not just analysis, but it can also be to sell the big moments. My range as a commentator is not just, oh, what did we do right? What went really well here? But what was a questionable decision? What was, maybe not the best thing to do in that moment, but it worked out at the same time, and kind of bringing a little bit more of that realness to the mic. Something I'm still working on, but that's why Justin Wong, I think, makes it to my top 5.
I didn't get this early enough to show you that the regen had already been activated, but when you see the green mana bar here from Asuka, that means the mana regen's coming.
So number 4 is Ringe. So not only is Ringe somebody who lets his personality kind of shine through his commentary, for me, I kind of go into a certain persona where it's like, oh, this is Jaytsu for the mic, for the camera, etc., etc. I think Ringe is a really good example of someone whose personality kind of shines through the commentary without, losing anything in terms of analysis or play-by-play or energy or any type of quality of the commentary itself. But also, speaking of analysis, I think Ringe, especially in this past year, but for quite some time now, has kind of been at the cutting edge of analysis and has really been starting to push it out. A lot of these, short analysis videos on key moments that I'm sure you guys have been seeing both on YouTube and on the Twitter timeline as well. The production quality that goes into them is so good, just showing a lot of this B-roll of what option was this player looking for? Why didn't they go for something else? What were we looking to beat here? And how did that end up, influencing their decision and leading to their victory or defeat in a certain round? And especially, offline as well. I think very recently at UFA, Ringe worked out something with the tournament organizers to actually have a live analysis segment of one of the, portions of the matches that happened super recently, and then being able to kind of have this Sports Center type explanation in front of a monitor and really detail to the audience. Oh, here's what we're looking out for, here's what's going on, and then back to the desk. I thought that was super cool, and I hope we get to see more of that in the FGC too.
If you would like a tip to take it, make some noise!
So number 3 is Tasty Steve. This dude, he is like one of the happiest dudes I've ever seen on the mic, or honestly just in the fighting game scene. And that also just like shines through his commentary no matter where he goes. Like, he is so excited to bring the action to the audience, whether it's pools, whether it's a top cut, or of course a top 8, right? He's so excited and genuinely and like sincerely interested in these players and their journey to how they got, to whatever top cut he happens to be commentating. And he wants to share that excitement with the rest of the world. I think it is like the best example of sincerity and earnesty. Like, oh, here's the energy that I want to bring out, and I'm so glad that I have a crowd to listen. Yeah, he's one of my faves.
Oh, what a challenge!
How did he block that? He dashed forward.
Oh! Watch it.
Oh my God, the
block!
Martinez
Stop!
completely another round of existence.
We are breaking the Dragon Russian!
So number 2 is Yipes. So I kind of had a, interesting bell curve, I think, of listening to Yipes. So before I was super, knowledgeable or experienced with fighting games, I heard a lot of his commentary. I was like, oh wow, Yipes is super entertaining. I'm so glad when he's on commentary, like he makes things like super interesting to watch. It's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like, oh, I got into fighting games, oh, I know everything, having only played for like 6 months or a year, and I'm like, oh man, all I hear from this Yipes guy is sound bites or trying to be funny, like all of these, out of context clips. I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't the type of commentary that I really love. But after listening more and more to these full blocks, seeing the ways that he, complements so many different types of co-commentator styles, whether he's with someone who has so much energy or with someone who has incredibly deep knowledge and analysis of the game, the way that he's able to, kind of mold his commentary style to bring out that strength in the person sitting across the desk from him, while also being able to bring his own energy, bring his own personality to the mic as well. Yes, we're still able to have these funny moments on the mic. Yes, we're able to, make Blanca noises on the mic, but being able to set up those moments where those don't take away from the broadcast, he is similarly doing that give and take with a co-commentator who feels supported by the guy next to him. I think that's stellar, and that's a skill I want to develop myself as a commentator. Listening back to some of my blocks when I made my first commentary reel, just clipping through hours and hours and hours of my footage, I was like, oh, what are my favorite moments? What are the skills that I want to showcase? I'm like, oh, surely I want to show analysis, which I had a decent amount of clips for. I was like, cool. Now, let me do an ad read. Okay, found a few ad reads, clip those too. I'm like, okay, I should round this out and show what I can do for hype, for energy, for these big moments. And I realized while I was so comfortable in doing analysis and kind of like talking about, oh, here's why we did this. Oh, that previous round was so crazy. When it came to these big moments, when there was a big upset, something happening on the screen, an insane interaction going on, listening back to hours of those VODs, I was looking at the footage and thinking, why did I leave that moment on the table? If I noticed it, like, why did I just go, oh, that's crazy, and then move on, Why did I not give proper credence, proper energy to something that if somebody else was standing right behind me and looking at it, they would go, what just happened? Like, that is insane. So I think in the second year of my commentary, looking at, kind of expanding where I get these commentary influences from, Yipes, Tasty Steve, Ringe ended up being such big influences in like, okay, how can I maintain analysis? How do I not just go, oh wow, that's crazy, oh that's insane, this hit is so huge, to the point where it kind of like loses its effect? How can I learn how to be more energetic, bring more hype to the mic, while also not giving up on the analysis that I was so proud of before? And seeing how those three kind of weave that in and out of their style, balancing the natural ebbs and flows, kind of like a normal conversation. Sometimes you build up to something and it's like super exciting as you're telling a story, and then as the downtime goes, you bring the voice down, you save up a little bit of energy to build up for another big moment. Those three, I think, were super helpful in, realizing, okay, just because I think analysis is my strength doesn't mean that I shouldn't be working on building up these other skills to kind of round out that skill set.
Oh! gets hit low, and there it is. Punk gets his retribution, his revenge. He is your Street Fighter 6 Evo champion.
So at number 1, my favorite commentator is Sajam. So this is probably no surprise for a bunch of you guys who are familiar with the fighting game sphere. Sajam, he is not only at the top level of analysis, having so much experience as a player, being familiar with a lot of these fighting game pros as well and kind of getting their opinions too. He's also I think he is super entertaining. It's super easy to get lost in the sauce and analysis and then realize, oh, I forgot to bring up this moment in the play-by-play or talk about this that's also happening on screen. But having the balance of being able to concisely describe a situation to a depth that satisfies, experienced players and pros and still teaches people who are so familiar with the game, while also not glossing over moments that would be interesting or exciting for a new player or someone who's not familiar with the game to see. It's a really hard balance, and I think that Sajam does it incredibly well. Okay, what are the things that I need to focus on? I need to be able to keep up with play-by-play. I need to know more about my game for analysis. So learning a lot of that from Sajam, I think was super helpful. I was like, oh, I need to know more about the game. I just need to lock in. I just need to study. And when I was starting out with Guilty Gear Strive, that was a lot of my main focus, I think, for the first year. And also outside of, related to fighting games, but outside of commentary, making that so interesting to people of so many different skill levels, whether it's, oh, here's a deep dive into this match and what we, notice and how I would analyze it, versus, oh, okay, here are these basic concepts about fighting games where, you see this thing happen time and time again. What's really happening behind it and how can I explain that to a beginner? Being able to communicate that knowledge to so many different skill levels is something that I really admire. And that's why he's my favorite commentator.